welcome to Meteorology Matters. Today we're looking into a really critical environmental decision, something that happened very recently in, well, a uniquely vulnerable place, the Florida Everglades.
That's right.
And what's fascinating here isn't just the recent event, but how it kind of echoes something huge from more than 50 years ago. It reveals this historical connection that's still shaping things today.
It really does. The Everglades, it's this incredibly unique ecosystem, a vast, slow river of grass, teeming with life, but also incredibly fragile. Every little change can have big ripple effects. So our focus is on a recent legal ruling about a facility, controversially nicknamed Alligator Alcatraz.
Right.
But to really get it, you have to connect it back to 1969 to a massive fight over something called the Big Cypress swamp jetport. Same piece of land, different decades, similar issues.
It's almost uncanny. So we want to dig into not just what happened in both cases, but the why and the how. What does this all mean for the Everglades and maybe for how well our environmental laws actually work? Okay, let's start with the present day, or very nearly. This facility, Alligator Alcatraz, it really burst into the news, caused a huge stir. This all went down in August 2025, right?
Yeah, very recent. And the location itself is, well, pretty striking. It was set up deep inside the Big Cypress National Preserve,
Okay.
which is right next door to Everglades National Park. And it was built on an old, isolated airstrip, a remnant from the past, as we'll get
A
into.
little historical echo again.
Exactly. But the controversy wasn't just the location, it was the purpose and how fast it went up. It was designed as an immigrant detention center. Think temporary trailers, tents, lots of chain link fencing, just sprung up almost overnight, it seemed, in this incredibly sensitive wilderness area, a real stark contrast.
And it wasn't exactly low profile. High profile figures were involved in promoting it, weren't they?
Oh, very much so. The Florida governor was heavily involved promoting it alongside the president. The president used some pretty colorful language, calling it a place for vicious migrants. There was that quote about teaching them how to run away from an alligator.
I remember that.
Oh,
And the governor insisted it would have zero environmental impact.
he did. That was the official line. Zero impact. Which, immediately raised red flags for anyone familiar with the Everglades.
How could you even claim that in such a fragile place?
Well, that was the core question the critics asked, and it led directly to the legal challenge. It wasn't just one group complaining. It was this really broad, powerful coalition. Major environmental organizations jumped in: the Center for Biological Diversity, Friends of the Everglades, their name will come up again later, the Sierra Club, National Parks Conservation Association, big players.
Right. Groups with real expertise.
Definitely. And crucially, the Miccosukee Tribe of Indians joined the lawsuit, too. For them, it wasn't just about ecology. It was about their ancestral lands, their traditions, their whole way of life being threatened.
So a really unified front.
Absolutely. Ecological and indigenous voices together.
And what was the legal argument? What were they challenging specifically?
It boiled down to a fundamental failure. The state hadn't done the proper environmental assessments required by law, specifically the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA.
Can you remind us why NEPA is so important here?
Sure. NEPA, it dates back to 1970, actually born partly out of the first Everglades jetport fight we'll discuss. It basically says federal agencies or state agencies using federal funds or permits have to study the environmental effects before they act.
Okay, so it's about looking before you leap.
Exactly. It forces consideration of impacts, alternatives, public input. The lawsuit argued that state officials basically chose to ignore this. They just didn't comply, skipped a critical step designed to prevent exactly this kind of harm.
So not just a mistake, but a deliberate bypass of the rules.
That was the argument. And the judge seemed to agree. U.S. District Judge Kathleen Williams issued a pretty decisive ruling late on Thursday, August 21st, 2025.
What did she decide?
She put an immediate stop to it, forbade the state from moving any more migrants to the site, halted operations.
Wow.
And she gave Florida just 60 days to start dismantling the whole thing. The fences, the industrial lights, the generators, the waste containers, all of it had to start coming down. A real clear order to remediate.
And she had some strong words about the environmental impact, didn't she?
She did, very clear. She stated the project creates irreparable harm in the form of habitat loss and increased mortality to endangered species in the area.
Irreparable harm. That's strong legal language.
It is. And she pointedly said there was no process for environmental evaluation, a direct rebuke of the state's approach.
So let's dig into that irreparable harm. What specific environmental problems were brought up in court?
There were quite a few, all backed by expert testimony. It painted a pretty grim picture. First, habitat loss and the direct impact on endangered species.
Like the Florida panther.
Exactly. The Florida panther, iconic, critically endangered. The court heard evidence that the new lighting alone, just the lights, reduced its vital habitat by about 2,000 acres.
Just from light?
Yeah, disrupting their hunting, their movement. And get this, 4 known panther dens were located within about 12 kilometers, maybe 7 or 8 miles of the site.
So mothers and cubs potentially right there.
Directly impacted. But it wasn't just panthers. The Everglades snail kite, wood storks, both endangered birds relying on specific wetland conditions. The Florida bonneted bat, one of North America's rarest mammals.
Its habitat needs are really specific, right?
Very specific. Needs stable roosts, undisturbed foraging areas. Its echolocation is sensitive. And the eastern indigo snake, a large, important snake needing big, connected territories. The facility just fragmented everything.
It's heartbreaking. Losing habitat for even one of those species is bad enough. But all of them.
It shows how interconnected it all is. You disrupt one part, and it cascades. Then there's the light pollution issue. This wasn't just any spot.
Right, you mentioned Big Cypress.
It's designated as an international dark sky park, one of only 2 in the entire southeast U.S., celebrated for its natural darkness, crucial for wildlife.
And they put in stadium lights.
Industrial stadium-style lights, running 204/7, transform this pristine dark site into something visible from 15 miles away.
15 miles.
Yeah. Imagine being a nocturnal animal like a panther or that bonneted bat.
Yep.
Your whole world is suddenly altered. Night essentially becomes day, completely undermines the dark sky designation.
How could that possibly be zero impact? It's just blatant.
It strains credulity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Then there's the wetlands. Direct destruction. Evidence showed the state paved over at least 20 acres of adjacent wetlands with asphalt.
Paved wetlands in the Everglades.
Yes, which raises huge flags under the Clean Water Act. You have to remember, the Everglades isn't just a swamp. It's the headwaters for South Florida's water supply.
So paving wetlands there affects drinking water downstream.
Absolutely. It disrupts water flow, filtration, aquifer recharge.
Yeah.
It impacts water quality and quantity for millions of people, not just wildlife. Messing with the hydrology is messing with the lifeblood of the whole region.
Okay, so direct habitat loss, light pollution, wetland destruction.
Yeah.
What else?
Physical fragmentation. They put up about 28,000 feet of barbed wire fencing that's over 5 miles long.
Wow.
It acts like a wall, blocking wildlife movement. Animals need to roam for food, for mates. This fence cuts off corridors, isolates populations. Think about a panther trying to cross that.
It shrinks their world, traps them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the operation itself caused problems. Pollution and waste. The site wasn't on the grid, so it ran entirely on generator.
For everything. AC too.
Everything. Constant fuel burning, leading to air pollution, plus all the water drinking, bathing had to be trucked in, all the sewage, trash, wastewater had to be trucked out.
That sounds like a logistical nightmare in a sensitive area.
It is. Huge risk of spills fuel, sewage contaminating the water system. Any pollutant spreads quickly in those wetlands.
Yeah, you can see how that would be a constant worry.
And just the general increase in human activity. More traffic on those roads through the preserve means more roadkill, especially for slower animals like snakes, turtles, even panthers.
Right.
Plus, they anticipated deportation flights, which would mean more air traffic over sensitive nesting areas, more potential for bird strikes. Kind of echoes the original jetport concerns, actually.
And pesticides, was that also a concern?
It was. Photos showed pest control trucks going in and out. In an ecosystem like this, widespread pesticide use is really dangerous. It can poison insects, which are the base of the food web.
Affecting bats, birds, fish.
Right. And the chemicals can get into the water, harming aquatic life, amphibians, everything up the chain. Cascading effects you might not see right away.
So looking at all that habitat loss, light, water, fragmentation, pollution, traffic, pesticides, it really paints a picture of, well, exactly what the judge said. Irreparable harm. It wasn't just one thing.
Precisely. It was a combination of factors, each making the others worse. The legal case laid it all out very clearly, backed by science.
And beyond the ecological impact, we mentioned the Miccosukee Tribe. Their concerns were also central to the lawsuit.
Absolutely crucial. Their connection to this land goes back generations, long before it was a preserve. They testified that the facility blocked access to traditional trails.
Trails they use for hunting?
Yeah.
Gathering plants?
Yes, for hunting, fishing, harvesting plants for ceremonies, for medicine. It wasn't just inconvenience, it was disrupting cultural practices, knowledge passed down through generations. Tribal leaders talked about this stark contrast. Their own approach to any development is slow, careful, with years of environmental study. 5 to 10 years, they said.
Wow.
And then they saw this facility go up almost overnight with no review, no consultation. Lucas Osceola, assistant chairman of their business council, spoke about sacred sites being impacted, their way of life undermined.
That really highlights a fundamental difference in perspective on land use and respect.
It really does. And they also raised very practical concerns about hurricanes. They remember Hurricane Andrew, how it scattered debris everywhere, caused massive long-term contamination.
Right, Category 5.
Exactly. They argued these temporary structures, trailers, tents wouldn't stand a chance. They'd be ripped apart, spreading waste, fuel, building materials all over the fragile wetlands. A potential environmental disaster zone after a storm.
A terrifying thought. So after this clear ruling from Judge Williams, what was the state's reaction? Did they accept it?
Not at all. They filed a notice of appeal almost immediately, less than an hour after the judge's order came down.
That fast?
Yeah. Sent a clear signal they weren't giving up. The governor had actually said beforehand he expected an unfavorable ruling, but vowed to keep fighting.
And their argument remained the same, that it was already a developed airstrip, so no impact.
That was still their core argument, yes. The zero impact claim, which the court obviously rejected based on the evidence presented.
Did they announce any other plans?
Interestingly, yes. Around the same time, the governor announced a plan to convert an old state prison up in North Florida into another detention site. He called it Deportation Depot.
So shifting strategy perhaps, but continuing the broader effort.
Seems like it. Which connects to what environmental groups were saying, that this wasn't just about the Everglades site.
Right, you mentioned a broader trend.
Yes, advocates pointed to other examples. Using Army troops in Big Bend National Park for border operations, increased law enforcement in D.C.'s national parks. The Sierra Club called it the militarization of public lands.
Militarization of public lands. That's a strong phrase.
It is. They argued these places belong to everyone, designated for conservation, recreation, cultural value, not for immigration enforcement, or as they put it, as prisons. They emphasized the Everglades as a park, a sacred home for the tribes, not just empty land waiting to be used.
Okay, this connection to the past is just, it's really something. The fact that Alligator Alcatraz was built on the exact same spot, the remnants of that old airstrip from the 1960s project.
It's an incredible historical loop. That airstrip is literally the only piece ever built of a much, much grander and ultimately failed vision from the late 60s. The Big Cypress Swamp jetport.
Tell us about that original plan. What was it supposed to be?
Oh, it was audacious. The plan was to build the world's largest airport. Right there in the middle of the Everglades and Big Cypress Swamp.
The world's largest.
Yes, 5 times the size of JFK Airport in New York. Designed for the new supersonic jets that were coming online then, like the Concorde. Was going to be massive. A symbol of progress, technology conquering nature.
5 times JFK in the Everglades. It's hard to even picture that scale today. How far did they get?
They got pretty far initially. The Dade County Port Authority bought 39 square miles of land. That's huge. Over 25,000 acres.
Wow.
And they actually started construction. That first runway, the one Alligator Alcatraz sits on, they began building it in September 1968. The momentum seemed unstoppable.
And it was stopped. How did that happen?
It sparked a massive environmental fight back. Really, a foundational moment for the modern environmental movement, led by some legendary figures.
Like Marjorie Stoneman Douglas.
Absolutely. The author of The Everglades, River of Grass, the book that changed how people saw the wetlands. She was fierce. In 1969, specifically to fight the jetport, she founded the group Friends of the Everglades.
This same group that sued over Alligator Alcatraz.
The very same one. History repeating itself. She teamed up with Joe Browder from the National Audubon Society. Together, they mounted this incredible campaign.
A real grassroots effort against powerful interests.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They mobilized public opinion, presented scientific arguments. Douglas famously said that swamps had a voice. They proved it. They showed these weren't worthless swamps, but vital ecosystems that needed defending.
And their arguments gained traction, led to some kind of official review.
They did. The concerns were so serious that the federal government commissioned a study. It resulted in a landmark document released in September 1969, the environmental impact of the Big Cypress swamp jetport. It became known informally as the Leopold Report, after its main author, Luna Leopold, a respected hydrologist with the Department of the Interior. And this wasn't just any report. It was the first ecological impact assessment ever done in Florida, completely groundbreaking for its time.
The very first one. And what did it conclude?
Its conclusion was devastatingly clear. It stated the jetport would inexorably destroy the South Florida ecosystem.
Inexorably destroy, no wiggle room there.
None at all. It sent shockwaves. And its legacy is huge. The Leopold Report provided the scientific blueprint, the justification for what became the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, just a few months later.
The very law used to challenge Alligator Alcatraz.
Exactly. It really kicked off the modern environmental movement in many ways, providing that crucial scientific backing. And it gave us that unforgettable quote, "One cannot drain a swamp and save it at the same time."
That really sums it up, doesn't it? The inherent contradiction.
Perfectly. It cut through all the political spin.
So this report wasn't just filed away, it actually changed things politically.
Oh, it had immediate political impact. Nathaniel Reed, who was a key advisor to Florida's governor at the time, Claude Kirk.
Okay.
Reed used the Leopold Report to convince Governor Kirk, who had initially supported the jetport, to change his mind and come out against it. A major reversal, driven by the science and public pressure.
That must have been a turning point.
It was huge. With the governor opposed and the scientific case so strong, the federal support collapsed. President Nixon cut the funding in 1970.
And the project died.
It did. Only that one runway was ever finished. It's now called the Dade Collier Training and Transition Airport, or TNT. Just a lonely strip of pavement in the wilderness, a reminder of what almost happened.
An incredible victory. And you mentioned its wider impact on environmental law.
Monumental. That fight and the Leopold Report directly fueled the passage of not just NEPA, but also the Clean Water Act and major strengthening of the Endangered Species Act. Foundational laws we rely on today.
Laws that came directly out of the effort to save the Everglades back then.
That's the direct lineage. And as a final result, in 1974, the federal government established the Big Cypress National Preserve.
Protecting the land permanently.
Protecting over 500,000 acres, including the jetport site itself. And crucially, the law creating the preserve also recognized the permanent rights of the Miccosukee and Seminole tribes to live and practice their traditions on that land. So it was an ecological and a cultural victory.
So when you lay it all out like that, the parallels are just striking. The same piece of land, the same fundamental conflict between development and conservation, even the same advocacy group, Friends of the Everglades, involved in both fights 50 years apart. It really feels like déjà vu.
It's uncanny, isn't it? And it forces you to ask, why? Why, after that huge victory in 1969, after establishing national parks and preserves, after passing landmark environmental laws inspired by that very fight, why are we facing such similar threats on the exact same spot decades later?
Yeah, what does that tell us?
Well, I think it shows that the underlying tension is always there. The push for development or using land for other purposes like detention facilities versus the need for long-term preservation. Laws are crucial, but they don't automatically resolve that fundamental conflict. It requires constant vigilance.
The fight is never really won for good.
It seems not, especially in a place as ecologically valuable and strategically located as the Everglades. It's like the land itself keeps testing our commitment.
And it's fascinating that the very laws born from the 1969 battle, NEPA, Clean Water Act, Endangered Species Act, were the tools used successfully, at least initially, against Alligator Alcatraz in 2025.
Absolutely. It shows the enduring power and importance of those protections. And think about Judge Williams' finding in 2025, no process for environmental review.
Right.
That's almost a direct echo of the situation before the Leopold Report and NEPA existed. Back then, there was no process. The fact that it could allegedly happen again, that the process was apparently skipped, shows just how vital those legally mandated environmental impact assessments still are.
They're not just red tape. They're the essential safeguard.
Exactly. They're designed to force us to look at the consequences before causing irreparable harm, like habitat loss, light pollution, wetland damage. When that process is ignored, the outcome is predictable. The 2025 ruling basically reaffirmed the necessity of that process.
So the Everglades really is like a barometer, isn't it? Testing our environmental commitment over time. Its unique nature, its biodiversity, it forces us to confront whether we've learned from the past.
That's a great way to put it. It's a sensitive indicator. The fight for the Everglades isn't just about Florida, it's about the principles of conservation everywhere. Protecting these irreplaceable ecosystems requires learning from history.
And recognizing that ignoring the science, ignoring the process, has real consequences, not just for wildlife, but for people too, like the Miccosukee tribe.
Their perspective is critical. It grounds the environmental concerns in deep cultural history and lived experience. It reminds us that conservation is about protecting interconnected human and natural heritage.
This ongoing dialogue between, as you said, human ambition and ecological reality played out over decades on the same piece of land.
Right. And the laws are the framework, but the advocacy, the science, the judicial oversight, like Judge Williams' ruling, are what make them meaningful. The state's appeal shows the dialogue continues. The lessons of 1969 about science, advocacy, and holding power accountable are just as relevant now as they were then. #outro.
Well, that brings us to the end of our discussion on Meteorology Matters today. We've traced this remarkable story in the Everglades, from the recent Alligator Alcatraz controversy all the way back to the fight over the Big Cypress swamp jetport in 1969. Seeing how these stories connect really highlights the ongoing need for strong environmental laws and dedicated advocates to protect these vital places.
It really does. And it leaves us with a pretty significant question to think about, doesn't it? What does it take for us as a society to truly learn from history when the same fundamental conflicts play out on the very same land again and again? And maybe more importantly, how do we make sure the voices speaking up for the planet today, the scientists, the advocates, the indigenous communities, are actually heard before it's too late?
Crucial questions indeed. Food for thought for all of us. Before we sign off, if you want more insights into weather, climate, and environmental science, be sure to follow meteorologist Rob Jones. You can find him on Instagram. His handle is meteorologist. On TikTok, he's TV meteorologist. And over on YouTube, just search for Rob Jones Hurricane. That's his channel. And you'll also find the Meteorology Matters podcast playlist there with more discussions like this one.
Great resources.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Meteorology Matters. We hope this look at the Everglades gave you some valuable insights.